All right, welcome, Buddy Book Club. I'm Dylan here with my shift mate, Keith. What's up, buddy?
Hello. I thought you were going to say the Donald to my Anna, but, sometimes we're just not connected like that, apparently.
I mean, we'll probably get into it, but maybe you're more the Helen to my Donald. I don't know.
You don't have the same desire? I walk by you or brush your hand, and I thought I would send you into a tiffy. Tissy? What's the word?
Tizzy? Tizzy, I think.
Tizzy.
There we go. All right, here at the Buddy Book Club, we're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing Shift, Book 2 of the Silo Saga by Hugh Howey. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us about any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or slide into our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, so please download. So download and subscribe. Keith, we loved Wool, watched the show, read the book. We figured, hey, the book covered more than the show. I need more that was covered in the book, so let's go read the second book. I was not aware it was a prequel. Were you?
No.
Okay. Did not do our research.
No. My comparison for the book was World War Z meets Phantom Menace, so take that with as you will.
Oh, okay. Well, I also have some Phantom Menace in my categories here. Let's jump right into it with Stock Up, Stock Down. What do you got for Stock Up for Shift?
Well, this one was coming, and it's been a long time coming. We haven't brought his name up in a while. But Austin Powers and Ted Williams, Stock Up. How do those combine? I'm not sure. Ted Williams, obviously a famous Red Sox hitter. The way they're connected, though, is that
Cryogenics.
Ted Williams also believed, yes, that you could be frozen. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I think Walt Disney too, right?
Oh, is he? Okay. Yeah, Ted Williams' head was decapitated and frozen, and it's currently some cryogenics facility. Austin Powers obviously utilized cryogenics. Both of them are great people. And in this book, it takes place like 30 years from now, and they're already been like, yeah, we'll just freeze everyone, it'll be fine, good to go. And apparently that's not a big deal. So stock up to both of them because they both believed in it, and maybe I might look into reinvesting in some cryogenics labs these days because I think it's right around the corner, it sounds like.
How do I explain to her that due to the unfreezing process, I have no inner monologue?
Also, the book, it does talk a lot about shitting and like having to find bathrooms, but we don't get any evacuation step 5 process.
Yeah, a little evacuation.
Complete.
A little evacuation.
Yeah. I needed it. Where was it? D-Man.
There is a lot of poop talk in here. I'm all in on the scat humor. I mean, you're a big Tim Robinson guy. If you don't like scat humor, then you won't like Tim Robinson. Maybe he like writes on the toilet or something and was just looking for inspiration, so he looked down. We need Freud to look into that or something. But I also had Stock Up Cryogenics on there.
Nice.
So we're on the same mindset. So if you're in Silo 1, it's like a 500-year process, right? You're supposed to be on like 10 shifts in 500 years. If cryogenics were around, and let's just say that you didn't have any social ties, because obviously if you bring like family and friends into it, it would be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But how would you feel about getting thawed and unthawed? Would that interest you?
I mean, it's kind of like teleporting to the future, but you can't go back. And I had a similar question, but it would have been, how much would you need to be paid just to freeze yourself for a year? So basically just skip a year. I don't know if it'd be that much.
But you're not skipping you're skipping the year that's happening, but like you still have the year in your body, like the longevity of the year, right?
I think if you do more than a year, you kind of miss out on a lot of stuff. But a year, I think you could just be like, all right, let's knock out a year out, and someone would pay you a lot to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the way the Patriots are looking right now, I could freeze myself for 5 years.
Yeah, until Tom Brady Jr. comes.
Yeah, TBJ, once he's coming around. I think it would be pretty cool, honestly, just like see technology changing, especially now where like technology is just going so fast. Because imagine if there was someone from 1900 that was like still around today, but they were 40 years old. It'd be fun to just kind of get a taste of every decade. We're not thinking about all the other stuff, the money and the interesting things that would be involved, but yeah, just to see how things get better. What movies are out. And you could spend that year like catching up on the last 5 years, like all the great movies that came out, like someone would already have gone through that and you could just rewatch those, be like, okay, sweet.
Or you could be Idiocracy where you wake up in the future and everything's just like the worst.
Yeah, I was actually trying to think about time travel movies. Not the obvious ones, but we got Time Cop, Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's a phenomenal film. Forever Young. I think I've talked about that one before, but that's
Looper. I like Looper.
Looper, yeah. So, I think I'm in on cryogenics, if it was
right.
easy enough. I also didn't really understand the whole part when Thurman invested in cryogenics, but then, like, the company went bad, so he was, like, fine. Like, it was like, oh, I lost all my money, but then all of a sudden cryogenics are awesome. So why was that even part of the book? What else do you have for stock up?
Stock up politicians.
Really? Okay.
I've shit on politicians up and down on this podcast.
On this podcast. You're on record.
For the most part, I just think they're all idiots. They are power hungry, fame hungry, money hungry. They don't actually help society in any way. They're all fucking worthless.
Yeah, you're nihilistic. I get it.
Yeah. You got Senator Thurman, who is all those things, obviously, still, but he's also kind of, like, smart, which I don't usually ever use for a politician. He was able to realize that, the world might be ending, and even though I don't agree with his plan, he actually got something done. He actually, like, put somebody together, like, not since the 1940s that politicians actually, or maybe, let me take that back, not since 1960, JFK, my boy, sending people to space, have we been able to actually put something together that the government, that we can be proud of, right? Everything else sucks. So, stock up, even though he ended the world, at least he got something done, and I was pretty happy with that. So, stock up there.
Yeah, and, he gets a lot of shit for sacrificing all these people, like, oh, wow, you just killed the entire world, like, what the hell? He's like, at the end of the book, it comes out, like, he was going to kill himself anyways, in the sense that he was going to, all of Silo 1 is going to go. So, I mean, some people say he's like Gandhi. I don't know. I'm just saying what other people say.
The silos themselves are actually well set up too. They lasted this long. Like, it was very well planned out.
Also, how does some senator create nuclear war?
Yeah, that wasn't really explained.
These aren't like the most powerful people in the world. He's just like a senator. Obviously, you have a lot of power, but not like a ton. You know what I mean? Like, Mitch McConnell can't create World War III. I mean, he probably could, but it's not going to be Armageddon.
They're like, Iran's going to do something. It's like, why don't you just nuke Iran then? That's it.
I thought the idea was that Iran had already released these nanobots, which were...
but they're dead. How are they going to make them...
But the nanobots were already in the air. They're self-learning. So once they're released...
Oh, and then they were curing them of those?
They can... Yeah, like they can just straight up learn... whatever, and then once they're in your body, they can just start breaking down cells or whatever the case is. That's kind of honestly, there's a lot of this book that they were talking, and I felt like I was back in like high school with some teacher that's just like droning on like, Snoopy's Christmas or whatever that is, like, wow, 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 wow. I was like, I don't understand the nanobot stuff really. It wasn't super clear. How did these guys just all of a sudden time Armageddon for the right while everyone was like waiting for the silos? They're like, okay, now we're getting Armageddon. Like, yeah, that didn't really tie together.
Some good points. I didn't think about that, but yeah.
So I listened to this on my trip to and from Michigan, so back and forth with the old wife in the car. So we listened to it together. She did not want a guest. She did not want to be a guest. Or she did, but then she didn't. I mean, I threw it out there. I said, hey, But she did help with a lot of the categories. I got to give her, a old pat on the back there.
You're getting notes? You're getting people to help?
I get notes.
You have writers?
Yeah, I got notes. Yeah, are you kidding me? I got a whole writer's room. We pizza and beer. Right. When we were listening to it, there was sometimes that like I would pause it and I'd be like, wait, what is that? And she'd look over, she'd shake her head like, I don't know. And I'd be like, cool. Then we both don't know. Unpause it. Like, let's just go through it. So my last stock up is depression. So not a good thing, really. Depression stock's really low, as is the mood. But without those depression meds, Donald would be stuck in the unknowing, and as would his dear sister Charlotte. So it's a big win for depression because of those meds, they would have just been another sheep in the silo, right?
I guess so. I mean, I'm going to have another stock about this next, but they're not depression. They're forget stuff meds. He's just like, I don't want to face the real world, so I'm just going to take these pills. Like, it wasn't like something that he was like really depressed. It wasn't a medical condition. Like, his sister actually needed them for PTSD. He needed them because he was a huge pussy. Like, he's just being he's soft as baby shit, as I like to say. That's literally all he was.
You know what's funny is the wife was like, you might want to do like Donald as a stock down because he's a big pussy. And I was like, really? And she was like, well, maybe don't say that. Like, I don't think you can say you know, bad connotation. So you said it. All right.
Soft as baby shit. Soft as baby shit. I changed it to, which is soon eventually they'll be like, babies have rights too. You can't be saying that.
Yeah, baby shit. Who says baby shit's soft?
Yeah.
Who are you to decide? We'll get into Donald later. But yeah, he was taking him to forget. Little dope sick vibes there. But it's just interesting that because of this medication, they're like, oh, we have this small percentage of people that are able to remember. Okay, why can he remember? They don't have the medications listed for him. But wouldn't they have it for everybody else?
But I would have liked to not remember either. I'd like to be like in The Giver. You know how like once he starts realizing, that's worse. I'd rather be in the society where you're just like, everything's great. What's up? You know?
Yeah. It was weird that people were really excited to get off their shift. They're like, oh, thank God my shift's finally over. I'm like, you're just going to put in this cryo chamber for next 100 years. Like,
yeah, you never know if you're going to wake up again. It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
You never know. It was, okay. Did you have any other stock ups?
Yeah, my last stock up, which is tied into what you just said, is stock up being an emasculated soft pushover. Stock up.
I literally almost spit out my drink.
And your dog started barking.
Yeah, and my dog started going. Sorry.
Donald's smart. All right, I'll give him that. He's a smart dude. He created the silo, which was obviously lasted for a while. But what other redeeming quality does he have? Everything else about him is shitty. He finds out he's helping to end the world, and he's like, I don't like this. This is the worst. And just starts drugging himself instead of actually facing the consequences. He actually makes a great analogy in the book. He's like, oh, this is kind of like the Nazis when they found out they were doing shitty stuff and just like were like, whatever. He's like, that's me. I'm like, yeah, that is you, bro. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, architects of death, right?
And then he like finally remembers he's a terrible person, and he's just like,
oh, I'm a terrible person.
Yeah, and he just makes like these feeble attempts to escape and do like the least you could possibly do. He's just such a huge baby shit, you know? He's just so soft. And the worst though is he's just continually crying. He finds out his wife, who knows he's a huge pushover, and probably left him immediately. He's probably happy to leave him, and gets married and has kids. Finds out she's dead, and he like cries for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And Anna still likes him. I have no idea why. Why does Anna like this guy? Why? It doesn't make any sense to me, man. Anna's like, man, I just want to be with him. Like, what do you see in him?
She's addicted to what the dick did.
He's literally just crying the whole time in her arms for like weeks on end. I'm like, this guy's the worst. So, but apparently that works. Being a huge baby shit, emasculated, pushover, sock up.
I totally understand being upset about your wife dying. Like, I'm sure that's terrible. But once you find out...
You knew that already.
Yeah, you knew. And then once you also find out that she's been dead for hundreds of years, like now, now you're moved on.
Yeah, if you woke up like 100 years from in a coma and people are like, oh, these people are dead. You find out 3 months later they're actually dead. Would you be like, oh my God?
I'd have an initial grieving. And then I would say, oh my God, Gladiator's on demand right now? Like, what are we doing? That's amazing.
Gladiator 3 by that time.
Yeah, like, what? Russell Crowe's son? Russell Crowe Jr. took up the mantle?
He got frozen. Russell Crowe's still alive at this point.
I would hope so. I mean, out of all the Australians to freeze, he's number one.
Is he Australian?
Yeah.
Is he New Zealand or Australian?
I'm pretty sure he's an Aussie, but maybe he's from New Zealand. I don't know. They're all together for me. I just circle them both on the map and say, they're good.
New Zealand kid.
Oh my God.
But he spent 10 years of his childhood in Australia, so we're both right.
Okay,
nice.
perfect. I like it that way. And then after this, his wife's been dead for 100 years. He has this cringy thing at the beginning with Anna where it's like, I can't work with her. Oh my God, I can't work with her. She's helping me set up a computer. Like, she's bending over at my desk. This is uncomfortable for me. He can't just be fine with there's a woman next to him. Like, yes, you had a relationship, but now you're married. You don't have to do anything. Don't be a weirdo. And as a friend of yours, be friendly, whatever, move on. But he obviously has some sort of sexual interest in her based on the weirdness at the beginning. So now, hundreds of years later, she's walking around the silo in the nude, the only woman he's seen in 300 years, and she's into him. And he's like, I don't know. I don't want to do this. And then when he finally hooks up with her, it's like, he makes it seem like she forced his hand and he like cried himself to sleep afterwards. It's like, if you didn't want to do it, you didn't have to do it.
Right.
What's going on? It's just unfortunate for the main character to be so unlikable in all ways.
I'd rather him be Thurman, unlikable.
Yeah.
At least he has conviction.
100%. And at the end, he all of a sudden does this weird heel turn where he just starts blowing people's brains out. But he still
he does the one heroic act is just choking out Anna for no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, wait, what?
And then afterwards,
what did she do?
he kills Anna and realizes that she brought him back because she had figured it out, or whatever the case was. Yeah. Like, she figured it out and wanted to tell him something. He's like, well, now I can't find out what she had to say because I had to go and kill her.
What a hero.
Yeah, and then kills the old decrepit Thurman at the end by blowing his brains out, but is like too scared to put a gun near him, even though the guy just got a cryogenic freezing and he's got a full bladder. That was I didn't even have a pick a character for the later rounds here. I just said anyone not Donald.
I said Thurman was my favorite just because, I appreciated it. At least I like it. He had a backbone. Someone needed a backbone in this book.
Yeah, obviously his methods and whatnot were totally twisted and he's not right, but he was an interesting character to some degree. Whereas the other ones weren't. Like, Anna's not fleshed out. Nothing. She's in and out of it, really, and you learn nothing about her besides that she can, like, jam wireless signals as he's trying to ride his four-wheeler. Helen! Or whatever. Donald obviously stinks. Helen's not even a character. Like, she's just crying on the phone because he took a job in Washington, D.C. Seems like they don't have a very good relationship. They didn't communicate. Like, he decides to be a senator, and she's like, oh, you're in D.C., I'm in North Carolina, or whatever. It's like, yeah, that was discussed. Like, I got a 4-year term or whatever the case is. I have no idea what it is. But you guys didn't talk about this?
The thing is, too, is that he's such... What's the word I'm using? Not pussy. He's such a pussy
baby shit.
That when he does finally bring something that's important, like, hey, the world might end, she's like, Jesus Christ, this again, bro? Like, I know your boss yelled at you today. Like, we get it. Like, he's, she definitely was like, is so ingrained that he's such a pussy that she immediately wrote it off as not being real. That's how you know.
Yeah. And they just got Karma the dog. That was it. What do you have for stock down?
I only had one, but being touched, stock down.
Wow, you're not a big toucher. So
this really upset me, and this is going to be like such a small part of the book. You probably don't remember it, but Donald's friend. I couldn't even find his name. I forget his name.
Marks or something, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, something. I don't know what it is. But he's constantly pinching his neck and grabbing his shoulders and like big brothering him, almost bullying him to the point where I was like, yo, this guy's got to get knocked out. Like, stop. I was so upset on behalf of Donald that this guy just kept on like, do you remember this? He was just kind of like touching him.
Well, I feel like this is a personal attack because whenever we see each other, I tend to touch you a lot. I like to squeeze the shoulders. You know what I mean?
So, I slap it off and I say stop.
Are you saying I need to get knocked out though? Like I'm kind of confused.
But this guy was doing it to the point where he was talking down to him doing it. It was a little. It was like a bully mentality. And then I found out he's best friends with him. This is his best friend, and I'm like, wait, what? But the moral of the story is, if you see someone doing this and they're just like taking it. They're trying to end the world. They're just ready. They're plotting to end the world. That's what it is. Anyone gets touched and just takes it, end the world.
Well, wasn't the toucher, his buddy there, wasn't his plan, like, wasn't he working with Anna to steal Donald's wife?
Pardon me? What? Did I not read between the lines?
Yeah, well, because you're talking about the guy when they go to the silo and he's like saying, I'm giving you my spot, or whatever the case is. Like, I'm giving you my spot.
Did he go with what?
Yeah, he then went with Helen. And they had like a family together and children and grandchildren and whatever the case is. Like
so he's a huge bully. Like I said, he wasn't even his friend.
Yeah,
I knew that. Okay, that makes that ties in. That makes a lot more sense.
They're still Eskimo
so Donald's the worst.
Yeah.
Donald's the worst.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. He found out his buddy was. Had a full life with his wife.
Okay, have you not seen Pearl Harbor? Great movie.
I know, it's exactly what I was thinking about. It was exactly like, oh, Ben Affleck is Donald. That checks out.
Yeah.
He comes back. Josh Hartnett is his buddy.
How dare you? Ben Affleck is not Donald. Come on. Donald's the worst. There's no, actually, I personally cast the actor for Donald coming up.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Preview. Stay tuned.
You have to cast Kate Beckinsale as Helen based on the movie. She was great in that. I honestly, truthfully, am not lying. I love that movie. I really
liked it too. I gotta rewatch it, but
it's like 3 hours long. There's a wonderful 45-minute fight scene. I think that movie is like the best Michael Bay has ever done, besides Armageddon.
Well, yeah, of course.
Well, Bad Boys is pretty good too. But... my only stock down is prequels. So, not since The Phantom Menace have I been this disappointed. Like we had previously talked about, I didn't even know this was a prequel. I went into it being like, where's Juliette? Oh, we're going to get to Juliette now. Because it'd be like, the legacy, the pact. I was like, okay, the order. It's like the next one's going to be the Juliette. And not until pretty much the epilogue, right? Do we even hear
She makes
her.
the Luke Skywalker episode 7 appearance.
Yeah, exactly.
You just see him on the hill or whatever, and that was Juliette coming in for that.
It was really unfortunate. If the prequel aspect to this was the origin story of the silos, which is what was taken on in the first act here, I was in. I was like, okay, this is cool. Now it's opening up in DC, 150 years before, or whatever, 300 years before, whatever the case is. I was like, all right, like this is interesting. Let's see. And the creation of silos, how that all worked out. Okay, cool. Down with that. But then after the bombs go off and everyone goes into the silos, we figure out, oh, okay, that's how it worked. There's 50 states, this kind of thing. That was all I needed. And that was after, 150 pages of a 500-page book. So after that was either stuff we already knew, being the Jimmy stuff, or new story, which was like the mission story, which we can get into later. And then just like continuing Donald waking up as Troy, but then like figuring stuff out. But it wasn't interesting. None of it was really that interesting.
It was ballsy to not just go back to the easy characters and just write out that story. I think it was I thought it was cool to do, hey, I'm just going to create new characters, do things. It's just the problem was that the characters kind of sucked and they weren't that interesting. So,
yeah, it didn't show progress to where it was going necessarily. Like all of this, the prequel stuff, it wasn't like, here's how it ties into Wool. Like, here's how it ties into that story outside of Donald's story, which, like I said, this last half of was not really informative and kind of useless. So the other ones were just kind of, it did feel, which it was written as originally, like different novellas. Like, okay, like the whole Donald story was one novella. The mission story was another novella. And like the Jimmy background was another novella. It was like, okay, that kind of makes sense if I was reading it like that and I knew that was the case. But stuffing them all into this book, and publishing it just didn't really make a ton of sense for me. We've done a lot of hating, that's for sure. And we will do more. Let me be clear. But what did you love?
I mean, I do think I liked it more than you, probably. I thought the writing was still good. I do think the writer's great. When I reviewed it, I thought about the story. I was like, this didn't really make a lot of sense. But I still think his writing's captivating, and even though the stories weren't. You're probably going to hate me for this, but I still want to read book 3 because I still want to figure out how this ends, how he wraps it up. And I do think he's a good writer.
I was scared you were going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not for the pod. Maybe it's...
because I was reading just like the Wikipedia article, because Wikipedia only has like the whole Silo series, and I started to scroll down to Rust, or whatever the last one is. I was like, ooh, maybe I just read these 2 paragraphs and feel really good about it, and then move on with my life, which is probably what I'm going to do. I don't want to do it for the pod.
That's fair. I honestly think what's good about the book is the show's going to do a good job with it. So I don't think the book did a good job, but I think what they're going to do in the show is start creating these characters that you flash back to, that while you're in season 2, likely they're showing more of the history, like how they got here. And then it goes in line, hand in hand with what's going on currently, more like a Lost would do, right?
It's interesting you say that, because I had a lot of Lost vibes with this book. I'm hoping that they do a like cleaner, concise way in the show, especially because the show has already shown that they're not going to really stick to the source material a ton, and they're going to stretch certain things out and compress other things. I'm totally down with all that. When we meet Jimmy, for example, we then go back and see his beginnings. I could be interested in that. The problem with Jimmy in this one was that we already knew that he had survived through Silo 17. So him getting in these like sporadic fights and whatnot, there was no thrill to it, because we know, okay, he's getting out of this. And then the rest of it was like him hanging out with a cat, which I did appreciate. Other than that, it was like him just trying to find a toilet to shit in, like you said. If they do a good job of like cutting back to Silo 17, or maybe season 2 can even open up with some of the stuff that happened way in the past, but we don't know it's the past. It's like, wait, what? When is this happening? But they make it clean. Like, I could see it being well done in the show. I don't even know if they're going to include the shift stuff, though. Like, we have no idea. They could just continue this, because the story's only pretty much like halfway through the book. The only things I have for love, I talked about the beginning of the book. I did like how it all began, and I appreciate that. I mean, in general, it's the origin story that we always talk about. I love that, and it was the one thing that was missing in Wool, and rightfully so, because it wouldn't have been in line with the book. Figuring that stuff out.
You said you didn't like prequels, but I think most prequels, the crux of the issue is like, you already know the ending.
Yeah.
Where this is, I still cared. I was like, we never heard the beginning. Like, I know Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. Like, that's obvious. Where this, I'm like, I don't know how they got into the side. Like, there's no context at all. So there is that huge missing gap that I wanted, which most prequels don't have.
Yeah, although with the Anakin Skywalker one, granted, I think we're on the same page that we don't really like Phantom Menace. It was, how did the best Jedi all of a sudden become a Sith Lord? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a little bit less complicated. A guy changing teams versus how do you get 50 silos with all this setup, all these things? Like, how did the world end? What, there's like 1,000 questions on top of that versus like, he turned bad, so there's some one event usually or two events that kind of led to that. That's
the sand people.
Yeah, I hate sand.
That's why I say I like the beginning. So I like that part because that was interesting. And
the part one.
Really, the only other thing that I liked was the mission. How do you feel about the mission story? I liked it.
I didn't like it.
Oh,
I don't really know even what happened. Buddy is trapped in IT, and then the worst part is that they give him a riling speech, his buddy, and then he goes from being like, I don't want to be here, to like, now I'm shooting this teacher. Like, none of that was explained. Why was he doing that?
Yeah, it was sped up, but... So
what was the speech that like was like galvanized him to go in there and shoot the teacher?
I think they made it clear to him, like the Silo 1 made it clear to him like what was actually at stake here.
Were they like, listen, you go in there and shoot the teacher or we kill everyone in your silo?
It could be. It could be. I don't know. I think it was more like the world's going to end, whatever the case is. This is our last hope. And he got re-indoctrinated. I don't really need to know 100%. I just liked, it felt like we were back in Wool with that storyline.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was like meeting new characters. You got a little like the microcosms of how the silo worked with, the porters being mad at other people that are like trying to move stuff around, and like how the farmers work, and like, their people are starting to do their own little farms on different levels. Like, well, that's putting us out of business. Like, we can't have that. And just the aspirations of those characters. I did think that the Old Crow was interesting and cool. I did wish that it was like Helen, for example. So it was like tied us back to someone.
Right.
So it was like, oh wow, like she's been around since then, and now she's aware of it. And in general, the idea being that Donald like saved Silo 18 earlier because, they could have just gassed the whole place, but he realized it's just this one woman who's doing it. So instead they kill her and then basically give everyone forget pills. And it starts over. Call the group, so there's only however many people left. Give them all forget pills. Like, Mission doesn't even know his name or anything anymore. He's just a new person and like now has a family and all that stuff. I thought it was just an interesting way of how they deal with a silo. Like, it showed all of these different options, how they can deal with silos that go rogue. If it's like a minor rebellion, they just kind of let it play out. If it's a more major one, they'll do something like this and then like make people forget and cut it half the population and then make people forget. Or if it's like a major insurrection, they gas everyone out. I like that aspect of the story because it reminded me of Wool, but they were trying to push this like Silo 40. Like, there's like at least 10 silos that are now completely out of touch. So I feel like that's going to be a big aspect of Rust. Mm-hmm. Like this, these rebellious silos that Silo 1 can't affect. I think that could be interesting, but they didn't really flesh that out at all. I guess the missions are. Did you love anything else?
No.
What about hates?
I didn't really like Mission. I didn't like Jimmy. Hated Donald. All the new characters, I just didn't like them. Not much going on with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't a big fan. I also thought it was funny. I don't remember who it was. It was either Jimmy or Mission. and they were like nervous to talk to girls, and then they saw like an animal for the first time, and they were like all riled up, and they're like, now I can talk. I'm like, what the fuck? What? What the hell? Are they really into like, what's that called? Bestiality or something? I don't know what's going on. That was a weird scene. Nice. I forget who it was.
What is it called? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I had to look at my search bar real quick, but
what did you think about the reveals throughout? So we had Troy as Donald is Troy. Was that like, ooh, to you?
I knew that the whole time. That wasn't a reveal at all.
Okay, cool.
How about you?
I had like an inkling of it or whatever the case is. And then when it happened, I didn't care. I was like, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Whatever.
Yeah, that was not a... And I'm a person, I've admitted I never see a reveal coming, but that one I was like, yeah, okay.
What about the ending when Donald and Charlotte take the drone and he sees that there's like green out there in the world?
I kind of figured that's like another program they put in there, but I don't know. I wasn't like super excited.
Yeah, and it also for me was more questions, but it's questions we've already done before. That was really interesting in Wool. Oh, is it bad outside? Is it good outside?
Yeah,
and then people are dying. And then, so if there's green out there, then there's like people alive out there. But if there's civilizations out there, wouldn't they know that there's silos? And then also wouldn't Thurman's whole plan be fraught?
It's like that place in Ukraine where you can't go because all the
Chernobyl?
Radiation. Yeah, so you're like, there could be people in Chernobyl underground. You don't never know because people don't go in there anymore,
Yeah, but you'd see like on the screen like a plane fly over or something. You'd be like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
It was just confusing to me, and it wasn't that interesting. I don't know. What about the reveal that only one silo is going to survive, and it's not going to be silo 1? Like, there's just an algorithm that's going to pick the best silo after 500 years.
Yeah, I didn't really understand the rationale behind that. The one silo that survives is going to come out and see 49 of them other were killed. They're going to be like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
They're not going to forget that the silo thing happened. They're going to be look down and be like, what the hell is this?
I mean, the idea that Thurman had, what he says to Donald, is that people having the ability to push a button and destroy the world. We had to change that and basically rewind everything so that people didn't have that ability. And Donald's like, well, you killed everyone to do that. So like, what's the point? And 2, people are eventually going to figure that out again. And Thurman was like, yeah, well, at least it won't be tomorrow. So plus all these people are going to be affected. Like, has anyone heard of PTSD? Like, have they done studies? These people all of a sudden get out, 10,000 people get out of a silo and start remembering of all this stuff, or, obviously they won't remember the past, but they'll start learning it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And now they're just in a post-apocalyptic world outside, smelling like shit, can't find a toilet, sounds terrible.
You ever seen the Seinfeld episode, Jimmy Seinfeld episode?
Mm-mm.
He just talks in the third person the whole time. He's like, don't touch Jimmy, hands off Jimmy. But the book at points was like that. It was just like, Jimmy did this, then Jimmy did, and it was just like, Jimmy. I'm like, Seinfeld?
Well, you would be happy that since I've been home, I started putting on some Seinfeld in the background, just to buck up. I started season 3, so just watching some season.
Yeah, that's where I would start, yeah.
So basically my point was, though, that all the reveals are, like, not that interesting, and I don't necessarily need a big reveal. It's not something I'm in need of, but if you're going for reveals and none of them are that interesting, I hate it.
I did cast it, like I mentioned.
Oh, you did. Good for you. I really appreciate you do that.
Jimmy, I did Daniel Radcliffe. What do you think of that? I think he's got the little crazy eyes. He's like new roles are like, I feel like he could be innocent and then also be a crazy person later,
Yeah, totally works for me. Michael Cera.
Oh, okay. I like that. And then I did Donald. This is a great casting. Jeremy Davies, the Saving Private Ryan coward.
Oh, interesting. Upham from Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
Upham, bring the ammo.
Yeah, that's him. That's him for sure.
Okay. It's hard to cast him because I feel like he's a little like smarmy or whatever, but there's nothing likable about Donald. I feel like if they actually cast him, they try to make it, I don't know, they try to make him likable.
He's in that movie too that you said you liked that I thought was the worst movie I've ever seen with Christian Bale.
Equilibrium?
Sir, how dare you? How dare you? No, it's a Vietnam movie. It was so bad.
Oh, yeah. What is that movie? When he's the prisoner of war.
Rescue Dawn. I mean, the premise is fine. The movie was just so bad. Oh my! It gets really good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. I do not get 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
How is that possible? 75% audience score. I don't know. The audience score too is off to me. It should be like a 40.
Anytime if someone loses a lot of weight for a role, it immediately goes up in the Rotten Tomato score. Like Christian Bale is like 115 pounds in that movie.
I've sent you the clip before of the ending where it looks like it's like a Disney movie ending. It's so stupid. Is that none of it makes sense. The tone of the movie is way off every single scene. It's so weird.
Ever go and watch Rescue Dawn? I really enjoyed it. Do not watch Equilibrium.
And then last casting to keep it in the Saving Private Ryan family, Thurman, Tom Hanks. I like him as a bad guy sometimes.
Oh yeah, if he would do it. When has he been a bad guy?
Wasn't he bad in like Elvis?
Oh yeah, he was bad. He was bad in Elvis. It was pretty good. Yeah, he's definitely bad in it. That was your cast?
Yeah, Anna's obviously Anna de Armas. Anyone that's Anna, she gets that casting role no matter what. Yeah,
and she's in this book just enough that you won't be able to tell how bad of an actress Anna de Armas is.
Whoa, sir! How dare you? How dare you?
I love Anna de Armas as much as the next guy.
If it was Anna de Armas, Donald was like, anytime she came near, it makes sense. The casting would make sense there. You're like, holy shit, it's Anna de Armas is next to me, you know? So
yeah, I could get that. So I think we're clear on would you recommend it. Maybe you go because I'm a hard no. Like read Wool, be happy not knowing, and move on.
The thing is, when I got done with it, I wasn't like that was awful. I was like, okay, but when I started reviewing it, I was like, wow, I forgot what happened in this book. It's really not a lot. Like, it was one of those books that's worse. Sometimes they get better after you review it and you, like, have time to sit on it. This one got worse the more I thought about it. So I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I like I said, I still do want to watch the third one, but we always give the test for these sequels and books, like book 1, book 2, book 3. If they don't stand on their own, if you picked up this book 2, you would never... You'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, you know, it would never make sense without the context of book 1. It would just be, it wouldn't make any sense at all. So for that reason, you can't recommend it.
Yeah, it was not a good standalone. And Wool was such a good standalone. Like, it would have beginning, middle, and end, and I liked all of it, you know, so.
Yeah.
It was confusing that he flopped on this one for me. It was a bit confusing. We're not going to read Rust on this pod, but if you read it and you really like it and you want to do, you know, a solo silo pod, feel free to talk to yourself for 15 minutes about it.
I do that all the time, so it's really different than usual.
Come on, you could live cast from the toilet and really bring your inner Jimmy out. All right, Keith. Well, I think we have some somewhat exciting news, right? Because, you know, we kind of said this as a joke 50 episodes ago. But what do we have coming up for episode 69?
Episode 69, 50 Shades of Grey. By... Who's it by?
Some woman that wrote fan fiction for Twilight and then started writing this book. True story.
Is that right?
Which, good for her. That, you know, she's probably made a ton of money. So.
E.L. James. And I will say, I'm pretty far into it. I don't hate it. It's not the worst.
Really? Episode 69, 50 Shades of Grey, coming up next. So hopefully we'll have that to you guys soon. It should be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I'm going to be blushing the whole time, but that's fine.
You know, we had an original segment that I'm glad we got rid of, but when did you get an erection? When did you get an erection?
What a segment! I forgot we had that.
Yeah,
classic.
So you know, we'll have to fight for this one. I'll tell you the exact timestamp.
That bell will be ringing all day. What?
All right. Well, it was good talking to you. That was Shift by Hugh Howey, the second of the Silo Saga, and we'll catch you all for 50 Shades.
All right,
bye now.
Bye now.